So, I mentioned this on the Jurassic Park, one of these, a week ago. That one of the film critics that I watch online that I really like, Movie Bob, does a series called Really That Good, where he looks at, films that are just kind of universally regarded as good and kind of does a film analysis on why they're so good, and pop culture touchstones mainly, and that kind of became the influence for doing these retro reviews, because if I'm willing, as I said in the Jurassic Park review, if I'm willing to go to a movie theater, pay $13, so more than the price for an average ticket, to see a movie that I've seen a million times, that I own the DVD of, I own multiple DVDs of it, and go out on a weeknight, knowing I got to get up at 5 in the morning, there's got to be something to that, all right? And as it happens, on his show, Really That Good, he did an episode on Transformers the movie. And while I really liked this show, and it was a decent episode, I feel like it's not one of his strongest. Because I feel like there's a lot of stuff left unsaid, a lot of questions left unanswered, and some defenses that I feel I need to make for the film, from my point of view. So, but the question that's on the table whenever you talk about Transformers the movie, the 1986 film, is why this movie? Why has this film lasted so long and has such a huge cult following? And it's huge. I've done several of these Fathom Events things to see old movies, on the big screen. I've never seen one this packed. They had to add a second show. All right? People connected with this film in a way they did not connect with a lot of the other films of its generation that came out. And there were a lot of these type of movies. G.I. Joe, Care Bears, My Little Pony, He-Man, She-Ra. None of them, I'm sure people enjoy those films and have fond memories, but none of them seem to connect the way the Transformers movie did. And the question that you gotta start with when you are gonna talk about this movie is why? Why this film? Well, again, Movie Bob answers a lot of those questions, but I felt he left out a really crucial point of it. And I can speak from experience because, yes, I am old enough. I saw this movie when it originally came out. All right? So I was there. I was there when this thing happened. And I think one of the reasons this movie has stuck with people of my generation so much is that it's the first movie that I can remember that was aimed at me specifically, that I felt treated me like an adult. Now let me kind of explain that a little bit, because that's kind of a twofold thing. First of all, you got to kind of put yourself in the mindset of a kid of my generation. I don't know what kids of this generation, if they have similar, experiences to what I'm about to describe, but for kids of my generation, it was considered kind of an unofficial rite of passage that at some point you snuck a look at, adult movies. And I'm not talking porn, I'm talking, rated R things. It was always a thing of when did you sneak to see your first rated R movie? When did you catch a little bit on HBO? Which was the first movie you saw that, somebody swore in, or that people were getting shot left and right, or that you saw boobs in, or something like that. It was one of those things that you kind of, I don't want to say made you a man in the eyes of your peers, but it was one of those things that you had to have one of those stories. And I remember very, very vividly sneaking to watch, Die Hard or Predator 2. I saw Predator 2 in bits and pieces so many times. There are parts of Predator 2 I know so well, and other parts I honestly don't remember because I never saw the movie all the way through, And in that mindset of a kid, of a young boy, 6, 7 years old, give or take, the things that were in those movies are what made it an adult movie. The guns, the death, the swearing, that's what made it an adult film. And when you went and saw Transformers the movie, I mean, this was a fucking movie wherein the entire original cast of the show is brutally cut down in the first 5 minutes. I mean, imagine if they did that for a kids' movie today. Hey kids, it's Adventure Time, the movie. Oh look, all the characters are dead, and not just dead, shot brutally. So that stuck with me, that this movie wasn't talking down to me. I never felt like this movie, even now, and I'm older now, obviously, and wise enough to know that what this movie was a giant toy commercial. My mother had always said it. I didn't believe it as a kid. Of course, I know it to be true now. But, pardon me, lost my train of thought there for a second. But still, as a kid, that had a tremendous impact on me, that this movie showed people dying. It didn't, coddle you. It showed... I remember very distinctly that my parents let me watch Transformers, but they did not let me watch G.I. Joe, which was on at the same time. And as a kid, I was really mad about that. Again, as an adult, I understand it, that the reason being that in G.I. Joe, they never showed the consequences of war, of battle. It was made to look like a giant, laser light show. Whereas the Transformers, because they were robots, and therefore could get away with more, they showed people dying and getting hurt. So my parents thought, if he's going to watch these, watch the one that kind of says, war isn't fun. People get hurt. And in this movie, it takes it one step further. People died. And I think that is one reason that it really has stuck with me and other people of my generation, of my age, because it never talked down to us. I remember when I left the first, the viewing of the first Michael Bay Transformers film. And honest to God, the first thought that went through my head was, why is it that the movie that was aimed at me as a kid treated me more like an adult than the movie that is now aimed at me as an adult? Why is that one more immature than the one I watched when I was 6? I think that really stuck with me as a kid, and I think it did with a lot of people. No matter how many stories you hear about the traumatization kids went through because of the death of Optimus Prime, I think that death, I think it stuck with a lot of people, and it rung true that, we are, we're kind of grown up. This is our grown-up movie. I mean, I didn't have an experience like that again till several years later when the Ninja Turtle movie came out, and that cartoon did kind of talk down to you. And then you go see the Ninja Turtle movie, and it's much darker, Raphael screaming, damn, and, there's all these, really tender moments, and Splinter giving this whole speech about love and fatherhood and family, and it blew my mind. Again, a movie that aimed at me as a kid, that talked to me as an adult. And I also think, kind of sparking off from that, is that the Transformers, by their nature, again, because they were robots, you could get away with so much more. So therefore, I feel like their mythology was much richer, their story was much more engaging, and again, much more adult. I mean, go back and watch the old cartoons, and yeah, the animation is terrible, and yeah, it's filled with a lot of 80s kind of cheese to it, but there's nothing there's nothing, I would say, immature about it. It comes from a genuine place. And again, I know that all this subtext, it's all accidental. They didn't mean for any of that. They were trying to sell me fucking toys. So the fact that they're, that they put any kind of effort into it. And I honestly don't believe sometimes the stories you hear about, they didn't care and they just slapped it together. There's too many of the stories stick with you. Too much of this movie is, really well thought out to just mean that, they just kind of brushed it off as another toy commercial. I think that they didn't realize the impact they were going to have. But I don't think it was all an accident or a mistake, personally. That's just me. But yeah, so let's talk about one thing in that good review that I do disagree with very strongly, at least in my personal point of view. And that is, he makes the statement several times in that review that Hot Rod sucks. And while I understand that, I understand where that criticism comes from, I don't agree with it. I think Hot Rod is actually a very good character, or at least very good as far as these things can go. He's one of the only Transformers to actually have a story arc. And I, honestly, when I'm looking back on it, I actually enjoyed season 3 of the original Transformers series more than I enjoyed seasons 1 or 2, even though those had, classic episodes in them. But on the whole, I think season 3 is the better season, and it's because of Rodimus Prime as the leader. In general, for me, I've always found leader characters in a lot of older things to be, boring. They're always perfect, they're always the best, they're always the bravest, they're always the smartest, they're always the most clever, always the most cunning, and they always seem to know just what to do. They're always the teacher's pets, whatever. And Optimus Prime was very much in that mold. He was the perfect leader. I can't think of an episode off the top of my head. I'm sure if any nerds are watching this, I'll get 100 comments about, all of this episode. But I can't think of an episode where Optimus Prime ever doubted himself. Or ever, questioned being the leader, or ever regretted being the leader. There were a couple episodes where he admitted he was wrong at the end, but never one where he ever kind of came down off the perch. He's the same character from the beginning, the first episode, till his death in this movie and when he returns later in the series. Hot Rod / Rodimus Prime, on the other hand, is essentially a teenager. He's hot-headed, lets his emotions get the better of him. We see that a couple times in this movie. Hence, Hot Rod. And finally makes a decision, or does something that has real world consequences and real negative consequences. Kind of like the kids who were watching him. Now, when we were watching him in this movie and in the show going forward, we weren't anywhere near being teenagers, but we were getting there. And again, all this is accidental. I don't believe any of this was on purpose, but there's this subtext I've found in there, at least that I think is there, about growing up, that the fans of Transformers were doing at the time. Hot Rod is very much that preteen going into teenager, that person who makes emotion-driven decisions. And for the most part, when you're a little kid, people kind of forgive those decisions. You're a kid, you're figuring stuff out. But then you hit that teenage or preteen into early teenagers, and you start to find out that the rash, emotional decisions you make as a child start to have very real consequences. As Hot Rod's does when he causes the death of Optimus Prime, or contributes to it at any rate. And that then translates into the TV series going forward. Is that the reason I found season 3 so much more interesting is that Hot Rod was not perfect. Or Rodimus Prime was not perfect. He was not, an all-knowing, all-seeing, always does the right thing. He was a young person stepping into a role of somebody who, but from his eyes, was flawless. Someone he felt he could never measure up to, like all kids do when they grow up, all feeling like they're never going to be as good as their parents or the people who came before them or whatever, because they, a lot of them don't see the flaws in the person. And, there are several episodes. One of the best episodes of the series for me is one called The Burden Hardest to Bear, where Rodimus Prime is so overwhelmed by being the leader, he actually stops being the leader. He takes the Matrix is stolen, he goes back to being Hot Rod, and he doesn't seem to care. Until he realizes that, you can't run away from the responsibility. You can't run away from being a grown-up and being an adult. And as such, again, that's why I liked Hot Rod, and I liked Rodimus Prime. I think he's what this movie needed. I don't think you could have done this movie. I think, again, this is why this movie is better than, say, the G.I. Joe movie. Because there is no real change in the G.I. Joe movie. All the characters are exactly the same because they're not characters. And I think Hot Rod is the first fully realized Autobot character that could have an arc. And I've heard people make the complaint, well, why couldn't it have been Bumblebee? Why, Bumblebee was a character the audience knew, and he was young. Why didn't he become the leader? Because Bumblebee was still very much the audience point of view character. He was a child, more or less. He was small, he was cute. The other Autobots treated him like a kid brother more than anything else. And I don't think he could have the same arc that Hot Rod had, because he's not hot-headed. He's not someone who would have done something that would have, contributed to the death of Optimus Prime and sent him on the path. That's not how Bumblebee works. Okay? Whereas Hot Rod, a character you're starting fresh from, and you can establish these things in a bigger format, a movie format like this. I think he was the proper lead. And I think, again, that character arc, because there is a character arc, small though it is, I think that's another reason this film stands out amongst so many of its peers. One of its characters actually goes through a change. Now, again, let's be fair here. Is any of this on purpose? And you gotta answer no to that. I can't believe any of this is on purpose. This is subtext I have assigned to the film in in my youth, the things I noticed watching it as a kid and the things I've still picked up on going forward as an adult. So even though I'm saying all this and I'm giving this, this analysis or this defense of this film, let's be honest. The movie's just fucking fun. It's a robot, action-adventure, space opera that's just fucking fun. The music is some of the best 80s music ever. The Touch is the most underrated 80s power ballad of all fucking time. I love it. And, you want to talk impact on me. I can't say this film had the same impact on me that, say, Jurassic Park did. But here is something. This film introduced me to Weird Al Yankovic. Dare to Be Stupid. That's the first time I ever heard Weird Al. And he's probably my favorite singer. So to wrap this up. So I've defended this movie. I got to talk about some things here that just... I'm going to talk about fanboy... I don't know if these are nitpicks, or these are plot holes, or these are just things that have bugged me since I saw the film way back in the day, and they've only increasingly bugged me since I've gotten older. And some of them I found out the reasons for, but they still, just within the reality of the film, the reality of the film, still just really ring true. Okay, so my favorite scene in the movie is where Unicron upgrades Megatron, Skywarp, Thundercracker, and the Insecticons into Galvatron, Scourge, Cyclonus, and the Sweeps. Alright, so he changes what I'm going to assume is Thundercracker into Scourge, because the color scheme matches. And he creates also the Sweeps, who are supposed to be Scourge's, like, his sidekicks, or his armadas, or his huntsmen is what they call him. But here's the thing. Scourge and the Sweeps all look exactly the same. They look exactly the same, and they're painted exactly the same. They have the same color scheme. And to this day, that bugged me when I was a kid, and it bugs me even more now. As a kid, it bugged me because you couldn't tell them apart. You couldn't tell which one was Scourge and which one was supposed to be the Sweeps. But it bugs me even more as an adult, now that I am hip to the fact that the whole thing was set up to sell me toys. So it bugs me that you want to sell me as many toys as possible. So all you have to do is change the color scheme on one of these Transformers, on either Scourge or the Sweeps, and boom, you got another toy I gotta buy. And don't give me this, well, why would they do that? They've done it already. Bumblebee and Cliffjumper are the same fucking toy. Okay? Starscream, Skywarp, Thundercracker, all the same toy, just painted different. So is Thrust, Ramjet, and I can't remember the other, Dirge, I think, is the other one. You know, all the same fucking toy, just different color schemes. So why didn't they change the color scheme on them? It just bugs the ever-loving shit out of me. Okay? Two more annoyances. So, in the film, in the Battle of Autobot City, one of the climactic moments of that is when the Constructicons, of course, come together to form Devastator. And, you know, they're all, Devastator, oh, and there's Devastator. And I remember as a kid going, why are they so afraid of Devastator? They've got, the Autobots had at least 2 teams of combiners of their own. They had the Protectobots and the Aerobots. So, where the fuck are they? You know, why are they pissing their pants at Devastator? Now, it turns out, I found this out, this is one of those ones I found the answer to as I've gotten older, is that the movie was being written at the same time that season 2 of the show was being made. So therefore, as they were writing the movie, a lot of those characters, you know, the Protectobots, the Aerobots, hadn't been created yet. So that explains that. I remember as a kid asking my dad. My dad was always the guy I went to with plot holes that I discovered. The thing that I was like, Dad, how did it? And he was like, well, you know how all the Autobots were all on the one moon base? Well, that's where the Protectobots and all them were. And they got away when Unicron came. I was like, oh, okay. So that fed me for a little while. But still, it always just kind of, even now watching, it's like, God, you know, why are they pissing their pants? They know Devastator, and they know they've got a couple combiners of their own. Here's the other thing that really always got me about the Battle of Autobot City. So it's supposed to be this huge battle, this huge thing. The Decepticons are there laying it down, laying the smackdown on all the Autobots and all this shit. But if you look at it, there's only like 20 Decepticons there. I actually did the math on this. There's Megatron, Soundwave and his 4, Rumble, Frenzy, Ravage, and Ratbat. There's the 6 Constructicons. There's the 6 Jets, Starscream, Thundercracker, Skywarp, Ramjet, Thrust, and Dirge. And there's the 2 Triple Changers, Blitzwing, and Astrotrain. There's only... and the 3 Insecticons. There's only like 20 fucking Decepticons out there. How the hell are those 20 fucking Decepticons taking out an entire damn city? How does that work? And yeah, we're only seeing a couple Autobots, but even the couple Autobots we see are just about the same number, or almost outnumber them. When we see Ultra Magnus, Blur, RC Springer, Cup, Hot Rod, Blaster, Perceptor. We know Wheeljack and Windcharger are there, but they're both dead. And we see some other nondescript ones in the background. So you've got an entire city with guns everywhere, because it's the 80s, of course. But this heavily armed fortress can't withstand the attack of 20 fucking Decepticons. That always bugged me as a kid, and it again, kind of bugs me even more now. I'm like, there's 20 of them. How did you not kill them all? You know? And don't give me this, oh, it was a sneak attack. It's like I can see that maybe it would have bought him a few minutes, but it's always something that just stuck out at me. But again, these things don't ruin the movie. These are fun plot holes. These are plot holes I like talking about because it's like, oh, this is so silly because this is, it was a cartoon that, the cartoon had no continuity checker. So clearly the movie didn't either. So just some things I felt I wanted to share. But, just like, I can't say this one had the same effect on me that Jurassic Park did. Or other films that would come along before or after did. But this is one of those movies from my childhood, from my early childhood, that has always stayed with me. It's always remained. The only one I can think of from my early childhood that really stuck with me, aside from this one, is probably Willow. And for different reasons. But this one, like I said, and I really believe, as I said at the beginning, I think it's because this movie treated me like an adult. It talked to me like I was an adult. And that meant a lot to a kid. I mean, this was the water cooler movie of my youth. I mean, we were talking about this film, of the deaths and Spike saying shit. I mean, that was like we lost our shit when that happened. And it's just it's nice to revisit a film that I can watch as an adult and not feel embarrassed about enjoying it, because I feel it actually is a good movie. I can't say that about all the films I watched as a kid. There are a lot of them I'm like, oh my god. Hell, I feel that way about the Transformers show a lot of the times. But the movie, no. The movie, Transformers, the movie, and there's a reason it's called that, because it is the Transformers movie. Michael Bay and his abominations of nature can fuck themselves. All right, for what they did to the Transformers. This is Transformers, the movie. All right? And just to close out, in case you're wondering, yeah, I wept a little when Optimus Prime died. Maybe just a manly tears, manly tears, of course. But yeah. Anyway. So, I like doing these retro reviews. If I go do more of these Fathom events, I'll do some more of them. But next up, we will actually go see something that's kind of new, I guess. So, anyway, until next time, drive safe, and I will see you at the movies.